Welcome to the November 2016 Project of the Month. For those of you out there who participated in the webinar, I apologize for the sound quality. This is Kathy Ferrel, National Educator with RNK Distributing, and in this month's project, we're going to be creating this Trapunto table runner. First of all, be sure to download your materials from the myfloriani.club website. That they are included in the November 2016 free designs. The design that you're receiving this month is from the Christmas Trapunto collection. And if you see my cursor, this is the free block that you're going to be giving. This is a Trapunto block. This collection has 31 different designs. These are redwork designs, and then these are your Christmas designs. So you really have the ability to create quite a beautiful Christmas quilt. And we're going to do a table runner showcasing one of the designs. You're going to create an in the hoop quilt block. It's created in Floriani Total Quilter. We're going to embellish it, and then of course your project construction is included in the handout. Project objectives: save an embroidery design as an image. And the reason why I'm incorporating this into the lesson is that as I go out and work for dealers, I repeatedly have customers ask me, how do I take a photograph that somebody gave me and turn it into an embroidery design? And you can auto digitize it in the software, but this, if you truly want it to be a good design when you get done, you're going to manually digitize over it. So that's why I've incorporated this lesson. You're going to use that image as a backdrop. So we're going to open a design and save it as an image. And you can do this with any embroidery design or anything that you put in your software. We're going to save it as an image, and then we're going to bring in that image and we can backdrop as a backdrop, and we're going to digitize over the top of it. And so if somebody sends you a business card logo and wants you to digitize it, or you've got a photograph, this is the best way to achieve the most professional results. It gives you the most control. And we're going to, after we digitize over that, create a custom embroidery design. The materials that you need, of course, are your Floriani software. These are the materials. This is listed in your handout. So we're going to use Floriani embroidery batting. You could use a different batting, but the embroidery batting works best. We're going to use Floriani no-show nylon mesh in the hoop to build the block on. This eliminates the need to hoop a whole piece of batting in the hoop. If we hooped a whole piece of batting, we would create our block, and all of the excess batting would be cut away and probably thrown in the trash. There's not a lot you can do with a piece of batting that has a hole cut in the center of it. So with this method, you put the nylon no-show mesh in the hoop, you cut your batting a little bit larger than the block. So the blocks are 8 by 8, so we're going to cut a piece of batting 10 by 10, and we eliminate the waste. We're going to use quilted soft polyester batting. This is for the Trapunto. When I created my first Trapunto project, I actually used wool batting. I put wool batting, and Trapunto is you stuff batting underneath fabric to give it a raised effect. And when I use the wool batting, you have to cut it away with scissors, and it was pretty time intensive. The beautiful thing about the polyester batting is that you can use the heat craft tool to cut it away. We're going to use, I did use Heat and Stay fusible fleece. After I got my blocks put together, I added another layer of fleece under there just to give it, it just holds everything together. The needles that I used, of course, are my 7511 embroidery needle, and then for my piecing, I use the 8012 denim needle. This is a great needle for those of you that are piecers and embroiderers. I mean, not embroiderers, but quilters. This is a great piecing needle. You could also use a universal needle. Dreamweave Ultra, this is also what I feel is a non-negotiable. You're going to put this underneath your main fabric, which is a light in color. It stabilizes the fabric. It increases the thread count. You're going to get better results in your embroidery design. And then the other thing that I like about it is that when we use a light fabric, I've seen this in quilts before that are embroidered. A lot of times you'll see a shadow underneath the fabric. And I don't like that. And so I will tell you that adding the Dreamweave Ultra underneath your light fabric will eliminate that shadow effect that you get. And because we're doing Trapunto, I think you'll be very happy with the results. We're going to use 8.5 by 11 Applique Wonder. We're going to print the pieces for the applique. You could also use Quilter Select. Quilter Select has 8.5 by 11 Applique is what it's called. They're very similar products. Either of those are interchangeable in this project. Floriani embroidery thread, it's your choice. I would encourage you to pull out your metallic threads. I used silver metallic thread in my block. The fabric that I used is a white fabric with little teeny tiny dots of silver on it. They're it's very diffused and very subtle. And the silver metallic thread just really makes it makes the project pop. The Quilter Select, you'll need a 60 weight thread. So in the Floriani line, we have our micro thread, great thread. But I also want to encourage you to seek out one of our newest thread lines. It's on the Quilter Select side. And it is a Quilter Select. It's called Perfect Cotton Poly Thread, and it's a 60 weight. There's 60 colors that are available, and this thread is treated, so it's got more of a matte finish, and it is beautiful. It's a beautiful thread to quilt with, to sew with, to embroider with. It'll give you a totally different look, and that is the thread that I used in my project today. Quilter Select 1/4 inch applique tape, or you could use Floriani Applique Wonder Tape in 1/4 inch. This is for the binding at the end. I have a technique for doing my binding where I use the tape. I hold the binding in place so I can stitch it from the front, and I get wonderful results. And then I also did use Quilter Select 1/2 inch applique web tape, and what I did with this is, I've done this before. When you're quilting the quilt, you have your quilt top, you have a layer of batting, and you have a backing, and you've got to hold those together. So I used fusible batting and I laid my quilt top on the fusible batting and then fused it in place. I flipped that over, and then on the back, to hold my backing in place, I took little pieces of this Quilter Select 1/2 inch applique web tape and just randomly dropped them in there. No pins required. I don't like to use pins. Pins cause puckering. So I always try to eliminate the use of pins. And so you can use this Quilter Select applique web tape to hold things in place. And that's why that's included in there. Your main fabric, you need a light color and you need a secondary fabric, a dark color. The colors that I chose, I used a white fabric with the little silver dots on it. It's a Christmas fabric. And my secondary fabric is a batik. And I like the batik. We're going to be doing applique, and batik fabric has a whole different texture to it. It frays differently. It doesn't fray as much as other fabrics, and it just has a whole different kind of property to it. So I used regular fabric for the block, but for my applique I used batik fabrics. Your fabric selection is up to you. Now, a question was sent in, how much fabric? Well, on the main fabric I went and bought a yard of the white fabric, and that's more than enough to do the blocks, and I used that white fabric for the backing. With my secondary fabric, which was for the applique and the binding, I got a 1/2 yard, and that was more than enough. It's up to you. So a 1/2 yard of a 1/2 yard of your secondary fabric, a yard of the main fabric should be. And I don't put fabric in there because I feel that this is your project and you can expand it as much as you want. So when it comes to selecting fabric, that's up to you. How big do you want your project to be? I made a small table runner with 3 blocks. Maybe you want to make a long table runner. Maybe you want to do a quilt. So you definitely want to adjust your fabric accordingly. Fuse your dream weave to the main fabric, and now we're ready to go. Make sure you have your latest update. If you haven't done this latest update yet, these are the new features. Remember, with your Floriani software, you have never paid for an update or an upgrade, and the new features in this latest update, Save to Sew enhancements. You have the ability now to import fonts. If you purchased embroidery designs that are letters, you can bring those in as a font. Snap to anchor for digitizing. I mean, there's so many things in this software that are exciting, and then these are some kind of behind the scenes enhancements in there. This is let's get started with the software lesson. going to come back and refer to this, but before we go, this is your trapunto block in the center here, and where you see I'm outlining that block. So this is the design. There's batting underneath this snowflake, and then there's stippling in the backdrop here. And I realize that the contrast of the colors make it hard to do. My original block, I used silver metallic thread here for the embroidery design. It's exquisite, but it didn't show up at all in the pictures, so I remade it with the red thread. There's stippling back behind here, and you can't see it because it's micro stippling, and I use that 60 weight Quilter Select thread for that. We're going to take the inside of this design. If you see that snowflake, and actually it looks more like a poinsettia to me, but if you look at the inside of that design, that's what we're going to use to create this larger design. So that's why it goes together so nicely. And after I completed this, I went and did a show in North Carolina, and the lady, oh my gosh, that's beautiful. It really does look great. And I think you'll really like doing this project. I think you'll have fun with it. This is a block that I made in Applique. I'm going to give that block design to you, so you don't have to worry about this block. So you actually have designs here for both of these blocks. What you're going to create is we're going to create this internal shape in the software. So let's go ahead and get started with that.
I have my software open. I have opened up a new document, and let's start with the first part of the project. I'm going to come over to my library panel. I'm going to navigate down in under free FTCU projects. This is where your free designs and your projects will install. We're going to go down under November to November of 2016. We're going to go ahead and select that on the library panel. We're going to go over to the designs panel. Now, before I get started too much in the software, I want to walk through what you are given in this month's project. First of all, you're given up here, this is the finished result of the lesson that we're going to be doing. So this is the artwork, and I've given that to you because what I found is that a lot of times when people are new to using the tools in the software to manual digitizing, they get frustrated. And if you really want to do the project, I want you to try the lesson, but you can go ahead and kind of jump through the hoops, and this is ultimately what you're trying to achieve. This is a block that I created in Floriani Total Quilter. I love this program. It's the Floriani Total Quilter has a program called Applique, and I made this block in Applique for you. And what this is this is an applique block. And so I already did that. And the thing I love about Applique is that this is a quilt block incorporating applique into it. And so these squares on the outside here are applique pieces. And in the software, when you create an applique block that incorporates applique, the software automatically generates your applique shapes for you. So that's what you see down here. And these shapes, all you need to do is that, and we'll show this later, but you're just going to take this and you can either send this to your digital cutting machine, a Brother Scan and Cut, a Cameo Silhouette, a Janome, whatever, and you can cut the fabric on your machine. Or if you don't have one of those machines, you can print this onto a sheet of Applique Wonder or Quilter Select Applistick. And then you just take that printed file over to your fabric, you fuse that onto your fabric, you cut it out. And what this does is it streamlines the process. This is all about making it faster. We'll scroll down a little bit. This is the Snowflake WAF file that stitches, and like I said, that's just for you. This is ultimately what we're trying to create. But we're going to start off at the very bottom here with this Snowflake block. You're going to bring it into the software. If you don't have 3D mode turned on, go ahead and turn that on. We're not going to do anything with that block. With this block right here, all we're going to do at this time is you're going to go File, you're going to go Save As, and you're going to convert it to your machine format. Now, please note the size of that. This is 7.8 inches in height. This is a very large block. If you do not have a machine with a hoop that size, you can resize the design. You're going to have to resize everything, and I will tell you when you resize the block that I've given you right here, excuse me, this free block, if you open this and resize it and then you would have to resize these. Be very careful when you start resizing it. I think, and my rationale for creating the blocks this large is that I like to make large quilt blocks. And so for those of you that do not have a large machine, I do apologize for that. So you can resize it. But all we're going to do is we're going to go File. We're going to go down here and we're going to export this as an image. You can bring in, open up anything in your software, any embroidery design, and export it as an image. So we're select Export Image. We're going to come down here and you'll see right here, this will allow us to export it as either a bitmap, a JPEG, or a PNG file. We're going to leave it at bitmap and we're going to call this Snowflake and bitmap. Now, I've already gone through this, but I want to show you what happens. What's going to happen is that you're going to get this little dialog that comes up and says export image, and this is your size. Do not alter the size. I mean, I guess you could. It's not going to really affect this project, but I recommend leaving it. You could make it smaller. You can make it larger. This little box right here, though, is what I wanted to point out. This says crop the image. And what that will do is if I deselect that when I export it, I have no idea. I think it might export all of this white space in the backdrop. I haven't even tried it because by default, that crop image box is selected. And what that's going to do is it'll crop around the outside here. And all I'm exporting at this time is just the actual embroidery design. So leave the default in there and go ahead and say OK. Now you're done with this design. We're not going to do anything else with that design. Let's go ahead. Let's open up a new document. We're going to come down to our backdrop tool right here. We're going to left click on that. Navigate to the image that you just created. Select it and bring that in, okay? Now, this is a picture. This is an image. You can't do anything with this at this time. There's some tools up here that you could use with it, but we're not going to mess with those. I do want to point this out. If you right click on that image, you've got define horizon, define scale. You could actually scan right in here. You can edit the backdrop. It'll open it up. You can make some minor edits in there. This is in your Microsoft Paint program. We're not going to do any of that. I just want to point it out and let you know that you have the capability to do that. But what we are going to do is that under the properties dialog, we're going to use this slider and we're going to slide this down to change the transparency of that. We're going to make it a little bit lighter because what I found is as I use this as a backdrop to digitize, if I don't lighten that image, I can't see what I'm doing. I'm going to right click on this again and I want to show you this. If you use your Alt S keys on your keyboard, and I'm going to do that now, Alt S, that will show and hide the backdrop. And I want to point that out because when you go through the process of digitizing, you usually, if you are a digitizer, you always start with artwork. If you've done any of the Trevor Conquergood workshops, you know this. We start as a digitizer with some piece of artwork, either a photograph or a sketch or a drawing or something. And then you're going to bring it in. You bring it in as a backdrop. You're going to use that and you're going to create your artwork over the top. The thing I love about Floriani software is that I have other embroidery software programs, and not only do I have to learn the embroidery software program, but I have to learn an additional software program, either CorelDRAW or Adobe Illustrator, or there's Inkscape. I have to learn a separate program, which slows down the learning process. One of the features of Floriani software, and this is a feature that I love, you have your artwork program and it's embedded into the software. So you don't have to learn anything extra. It's easy. So your artwork tools, we've got this tool right here, and this is a line tool, a pen tool, and a Bezier tool. These all create clean outlines. And when you are digitizing, ladies and gentlemen, the first step is to create your outlines of what it is that you want to embroider. We also have this tool right here that we're going to use. This tool right here, it's custom shapes. So square, circle, rectangle. If you click on this custom shapes dialog. These are artwork shapes that come with this. If you watch the Kathy Quinn weekly videos, you'll see that she uses these shapes a lot. You also, if you go to this drop down and click on Easy Art, when you come under here, these are additional artwork shapes that come with your software. You've got a lot of tools and resources available to you there. What we're going to start off with is we're going to click the custom shapes, and we're going to start with this circle. Click the circle. I'm come down into my screen. I'm going to left click and I'm going to drag. Okay. Now, when I hold my control key, right now I clicked my control key. And what that does is the control key constrains this, meaning that whatever shape that I'm creating, when I hold my control key, if I don't hold it, I create an ellipse. When I hold my control, I create a perfect circle. So I'm going to use my control key to create that perfect circle. I'm going to drag it over the top there. And now I'm going to go to my drop down and I'm going to zoom into the selection so that I can see the shape of my circle. I'm holding the control key to constrain that. Okay, I'm going to let go. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to resize that circle over the top here. And I'm just using those handles, and it does not have to be exact, and I'm placing that circle over that backdrop. See, this is a raster, and when I zoom in, do you see how this raster file is pixelated? And when you try to convert a raster file into embroidery, the problem has to do with this shape. The shape here, these little rasters, those jiggy jaggies, that's not what your machine reads. Embroidery software needs a clean shape file. Do you see this is a vector shape, and the vector shape is a clean line. And this is why if you really want to digitize, you will get the best results, not by taking a raster image over here and doing some kind of a conversion process for it. You will never get as good of results as if you bring it in as a backdrop and digitize it manually over the top. And once you start doing this, you'll find that results are easy. I have this question come up when I do a workshop. Kathy, I've got an embroidery design and it's a really bad design. Can I fix it in the software? Yeah, you can fix it in the software. Of course you can. But what I found is if I've got an embroidery design that I love, a lot of times the information in that embroidery design that is bad, it will take me longer to fix what's in there that's bad than to just delete the shape, redigitize over the top, and recreate it. I have learned this over the course of time. It's all about time. I can recreate something faster than it takes me to fix it. Okay, I'm going to zoom out a little bit. Now we're going to come over and we're going to use this tool. I'm going to open up a blank document to demonstrate how these three tools work. If you're new to digitizing, if you're new to this process, I recommend that you do this and practice a little bit. Okay, so I've got my first tool here, which is my line tool. When I come down in on this blank page, I'm going to left click. And every time I left click, I create a vector point, all right? And this is linear, it's straight lines. So how do I get a curve? Easy. Hold down the control key as you do this. Now I've got my control key down, and when I left click, do you see how I get this nice curve in there? And when I'm done, I right click and I'm finished. If I wanted to edit any of those shapes, when I have a vector shape in there, this is my shape tool. I can select that, and now I can come down, and on any of those points in there, I can move them. I can move those around. I could right click, I could add a point, I could right click on that point, I could delete that point, I could smooth it, so this is the beginning process. So that's the first tool. The second tool that we have is the pen tool. Now you might think that this is the tool you want to use. This is a pen. So I'm going to click and I'm going to drag. And basically what I'm doing is I'm drawing. You will never get clean shapes with this tool. Now if you're using a tablet, a bamboo tablet or a Wacom tablet or something like that as a drawing tool, the pen tool works really well. But you're never going to get clean shapes using that pen tool. If I go back in, if I select that, these little shapes, the little angles and everything are never going to be as clean. And it probably has to do with the drag that you get based on your mouse. The third tool that we are going to show is actually called the Bezier tool. And with the Bezier tool, realistically, when you're creating curve shapes, this is the best tool to use. With the Bezier tool, I left click, and this is for creating curves. And the Bezier tool actually creates this, I call it kind of like a teeter-totter. And the longer I make the teeter-totter, the more of an angle I get in here. And as I drag that angle around, it changes the shape in there. But this is going to give you your smoothest shapes. And I think it pays to take the time to kind of practice with these tools so that you know what they are. And if you come in and just kind of play around with them, if you know how these tools work, when you take an existing embroidery design and you're trying to alter the shape, if you know how the outline tools work, it makes it easier for you to alter the shape of existing embroidery designs. Okay, so that's how those three tools work. Well, which one are we going to use? I'm not going to use the pen tool. Realistically, if I want and you can mix and match these tools as you go through, but I'm just going to simplify things, we're going to use this line tool, and we're going to use it to left click. I'm going to now hold my control key because I'm creating curves, and I'm just going to click over the top of my backdrop. I'm going to release the control key because I want a nice clean point here. So my control key is not down. I'm going to re-engage my control key. I'm going to finish the shape right here. I'm going to right click. I'm done. I'm going to come back to the second petal. I'm going to left click. Now I've got my control key down. I'm going around that shape. I release the control key to get a nice clean point in there. Re-engage the control key, come down, finish the shape. And notice I'm working in a clockwise direction. Control key engaged, release. And the first couple times you use this, it's not as fast. But the more you use it, practice makes you much quicker at the process. And believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, people that digitize for a living, if you are a true digitizer, this is how you start. We don't start with stitches over the back. We usually start with something like this because we get clean shapes in there. And if you make a mistake, all you need to do is press your backspace key and it will delete that last vector. I made a mistake there. So I'm going to come around. I'm going to finish that. All right. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to hide my backdrop because I'm going to examine the shapes that I have right now. And I've got a little bit of an overlap in here. What I'm looking for is I want to make sure things are connected, that I have everything touching, but I don't have too big of an overlap. So right now I'm going to scroll in with my mouse. I'm going to come over and I'm going to come into this right here, and all I'm using is I'm using my my shape tool right here, and I'm going to come in and just change in. And if you've got something that you don't like, this is the time to do it. And I'm just coming in and I'm cleaning that up a little bit. So this line right here, I might drop that back a little. I might have too much overlap on this one. I might drop that in there. And that's all I'm doing right now is cleaning that up. All right, that looks good. So now I'm going to bring my backdrop back in, Alt-S to bring that in, zoom out a little bit more, and I'm going to start on that second line of petals. So I'm using that same tool. I'm going to curve click here, curve. And on this petal right here, I'm not even going to use the control key to make a curve. I'm going to come back over here. So like I said, as you go through this process, you'll find that you get much quicker. It actually, if you don't talk while you're doing this, it's even faster. When I talk while I'm doing this, it makes the process a little bit slower. Oh, and I do see right now I've got a problem. Let me turn off my backdrop. I've got a problem right here. All right. So this one, if we want to look at how to change that, the problem is I'm going to make that a line. Okay. So do you see what I did right there? And that's why I said you can come in here and you can make this a cusp. And when you change a point to a cusp, that gives you a curve. See? And you can smooth it. So you have a lot of abilities in here, but I recommend that if you truly, and I do, I have people ask me all the time. I have people ask me, somebody gave me a business card and they want me to digitize the logo off the business card. And I've done this in multiple instances. I've scanned the card and I've used my wizard tool up here to turn it into artwork. And I've brought the picture in as a backdrop and digitized over the top. The best results you're going to get is from this process where you bring it in as a backdrop, you digitize over the top. So I would, and I'm not going to do the whole shape in here. What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to open up a blank document. I'm going to bring my artwork back in here, and I'm going to just go ahead and lighten that up. I'm going to go back to my design panel. Whoops, click on apply, Kathy. I'm going to go back to that design panel, and that free design that I gave you up here, that free artwork, let's just go ahead and drag it over here at the top. Okay, that's completed for you. And I wanted to show you what that is. So this is the free artwork that I gave you. And so I'm going to just hide that now. And when you go over to the sequence view window, once you've got that all digitized, you go to the sequence view window, what you'll see is we have multiple little pieces of vector art. Now, as I said, the beauty of Floriani software, your artwork tools are embedded into the software. And what we want to do is we want to take all of those little pieces and we're going to combine them. We want to group them and combine them so that the software sees them as one shape. The reason for doing that is that then when we turn these into stitches, it creates this beautiful pathing. So under your sequence view, select everything. Come over here, let's group it first. And now, see, these are your artwork tools. This will remove overlaps. You have everything embedded right into the software. But we're going to use this last tool right here and we're going to combine it. And so with that tool, what we did is we took all those individual shapes and we combined them. And so now the software sees this, or we have this as one clean piece of vector artwork. Great. Now we're ready. Let's open up a new document. Let's go back to our free designs for the month and let's bring in our applique block. This block is already created for you. I created it in Appli-Stitch. I want to show you what happens. So we're going to make this in the hoop. We're going to go ahead and we're going to put a piece of nylon no-show mesh into the hoop. We're going to add a piece of batting and then our piece of fabric over the top. The first color that stitches out shows you the shape of the block, and it's going to stitch down these placement lines for your fabric. And when I go to the construction process, I'll illustrate that a little bit more for you. But we're going to cut our fabric. We're going to lay our fabric right here on top. It's going to fit perfectly and fuse it down into place. Then this is the stippling that's going to hold that fabric in place and make it look really quilty and pretty. And then it's going to stitch this beautiful motif stitch. I did the motif stitch in metallic threads. It is gorgeous. It's silver metallic threads. And so that's going to stitch over the top there. And then the last thing that's going to happen is that it'll do this outline. Now we're going to, let me go back to the PowerPoint over here to our picture of our table runner. Okay, so in this table runner, if you see, we're going to create this. This is already done for you, but we want to create this shape inside, and that artwork that we just created is what we're going to use for that. This is applique with stitching on top of it. Let me go back over into my block, and we're going to take this piece of artwork that we created here. Let's right-click and copy that. And let's bring it over and let's paste it. All right, there's our artwork. Now we're going to resize this. And this is the beauty of using artwork in the software. When you use artwork and you resize it, because these are lines, you don't get any distortion. If this was a pixelated image, a raster file, let me undo that, I would get pixelation in there. I'm going to select all items. I'm going to use this tool right here just to make sure everything is centered on the page. Everything's lining up. If I move that, I want to go back. I want to make sure that it's centered on the page. So when I get it to the size, and this is arbitrary to you, but what you want to do is you're going to get this to the size that you want it. Now, currently, this is artwork. How do we turn it into stitches? Down here on the bottom of your screen, you have your Stitch Effects toolbar. And what this Stitch Effects toolbar does is that when you have artwork, you can turn your artwork into running stitches, satin stitches, or fill stitches in there. So you could play around with this, but we're doing applique. And so what we're going to do is we're going to turn this right now into a running stitch. Now I want to demonstrate something for you. I'm going to come back to this right here. And at this point, we're going to watch how this stitches out. And what I want you to focus on is the pathing. So it starts stitching this design and it backtracks. And it's going to stitch this design beautifully and cleanly. This is what the software does for you. And this is why if you create the artwork ahead of time and combine it, when you convert it into the stitches, the software reads that information cleanly and it's going to make your best stitch lines in there. You don't have to think about the pathing or anything else. Isn't that beautiful? It is a beautiful thing. And when you watch this stitch out, I will tell you, you'll just be in awe. It's so clean and so beautiful. All right. So we've got our stitches in there. The next thing we're going to do though is that, see the shape right here? I need to add a piece of fabric underneath that stitching. And we're going to select that and we're going to use this tool right here to create an outline around the outside of that. I use this tool a lot. You can bring in any embroidery design and you can create an outline shape for the embroidery design and cut fabric or something like that with it, or create artwork from it. When you select that, we're going to do ripples. Make sure that that's set at 1. And what that means is that it's kind of like echo quilting. So I can make multiple ripples around the outside of this. I don't want that. Spacing, we're going to leave at 0 because I want to make my outline shape right here on the perimeter of my existing snowflake. And then I'm going to say okay. Okay, I just took stitches, which is this right here, and I created this right here, which is a clean artwork shape, okay, right on the outline of that existing design. I'm going to take that artwork shape. We want this to stitch first, and so we're going to move it up. And I'm actually, and I think I missed this in the webinar, I'm going to move that up above the block. We'll do this last. We want this to stitch last. So this right here is going to be a piece of it's going to be a stitch file, so let's convert that into stitches. And we're going to copy it, and we're going to paste it. And when we do, we're going to change the colors to make a color stop. And let's move that up also. Okay, so now what's going to happen is that the first thing, and I'm working in my sequence view window, this is my applique placement, this is my stitches, this is my motif stitches. Then I'm going to have this stitch out, and this is going to be my placement for my applique fabric. I'm going to lay my fabric down. This is going to tack down my fabric, and it'll tack that down on top there. The machine will stop. I'm going to cut away the outside of the fabric. Then I'm going to stitch these decorative motif stitches on there. I made one additional adjustment to the motif stitches. When you convert it to stitches, by default it comes in as a single run. Make sure that you have the motif stitches for that. I called it a poinsettia, snowflake, whatever. Make sure that you have that selected. Come in under your properties panel and let's change that from a single run to a bean stitch. and click on apply. Now, with our bean stitches in our software, you can go 3, 5, 7, 9. And what that does is that it's actually going to go back and forth. And so instead of having just one layer of thread, this will have 3. So it's going to go stitch, 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 move, stitch, 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 move, stitch, stitch, stitch. And that's what a bean stitch is. It's gorgeous. And I left mine at 3. Make sure I didn't make any changes to that. And this is going to be exquisite when you stitch that out. Okay, so we're done with our block. Make sure that that's last under the order. And then we're going to go ahead and save this. Save this as your applique block in a WAF file. And then file save as, and save this as a file for your machine for stitching out. And now we're done in the software. All right, let's look at project construction, how to put the project together. Make sure that you print your handout. And just as a reminder, especially if this is your first project, you're going to go into your C drive, just use Windows Explorer, go to your C drive, look for your Floriani folder, open that up. There's a designs folder, open that up. There's a free FTCU projects folder, open that up. There's a November folder, open that up. Open up November 2016. And when you do, there'll be a PDF file in there. And you're going to double click on that. You're going to open it up. It opens up an Adobe Acrobat Reader or whatever other program you have. Print that off. And those are your instructions for putting the project together. We're ready to make the block. The first block that we're going to make is the Trapunto block. And to make the project as shown, you're going to make one block. The first thing that you do is you're going to hoop nylon no-show mesh. You're going to lay a 10-inch square of Floriani embroidery batting on top of the nylon no-show mesh. All right? Now, you can substitute a different kind of batting. You could use an all cotton batting. Don't use a polyester batting. It really needs to be cotton because we're going to put 2 layers of our Floriani polyester batting, and you can cut the polyester batting about 4 inches square and put that on top and stitch out color 1. So it stitches out this little tack down stitch, and we want it to stitch over the top of all of our batting. Next, we're going to use this heat craft tool. Now, if you use wool batting, you can still make this project, but you're going to have to take scissors and trim around all the little outside of the shape, which you could do. Also, you need to have that batting down here because we've got nylon no-show mesh in the hoop that's holding this block together. And if you don't put a piece of batting underneath there, what's going to happen is you'll probably burn through your nylon no-show mesh. And ask me how I did that because I was trying to do the block without the batting in it, and I burned through the first nylon no-show mesh. So you need to have that batting in there, and be very careful when you trim. You don't want to burn your nylon no-show mesh because then you get to start all over again. But if you use the polyester batting, then you're just going to take that heat craft tool. You're just going to run along the outside here. And I took my hand and I lifted up the edge, and then I just came around here and I cut 1 layer. I did the top layer of the polyester batting, and then I came back and did the bottom layer of the polyester batting just to kind of make sure that I wasn't cutting anything else. Because that tool gets hot enough that if you leave it laying on your embroidery batting long enough, it'll burn through that too. This little tool, if you haven't used it, gets really hot. Okay, now once you've got your batting cut away, then you put your layer of your fabric on top there and stitch the remainder of the design. So it stitches the outline shape here, tacks down the fabric, and then it comes back over the top and it stitches the embellishment on top. And you can kind of see how this is raised and puffy underneath there. I did make this block with metallic thread, and it is gorgeous. I did not use that in the finished project because, of course, you can't really see it very well. And so for the purpose of making pictures, I went ahead and I stitched it with colored thread. And this is the Quilters Select 60 weight thread that I used, and it has a matte finish. That's one of the big differences between our Floriani micro thread and the Quilters Select thread. You do want to use a 60 weight thread. The last thing that stitches out is in the background here. It stitches stippling detail, and you do want to use a 60 weight thread for that stippling. For the applique block, you're going to make 2 of these, or more. Hoop your nylon no-show mesh. This is your foundation for building your block. Add a 10-inch square of batting, and you can use embroidery batting or other batting. I used embroidery batting just because I used embroidery batting in the first block, and it keeps everything very consistent. But you could use some of the Floriani cotton bamboo batting. You could use some Quilter Select cotton batting. I mean, it's up to you what you wanted to use in there. And then add your layer of fabric. Stitch color 1. And what color 1 is, it's your placement lines here for the applique pieces. Now, we're going to add our applique pieces in there. And I didn't demonstrate this for you in the software. So let me go back here real quickly and open up a new page. I'm going to go back under designs. I'm going to grab this right here. These are your applique shapes. If you have a digital cutting machine, when you bring that in, you're going to go File, you're going to go Export Artwork, and you're going to export this for your cutting machine, either as an SVG file if you're using a Cameo, which a lot of our customers are, if you're using a Janome, which a lot of our customers are, any of those machines that'll read an SVG file, or if you're using the Brother Scan and Cut, you're going to export this as an FCM file. You're going to take that and you can cut your fabric on your machine precisely. If you do not have one of those machines, come in File, come under here to Print, and you're going to print this onto a piece of Floriani Applique Wonder. And you don't have to worry about reversing the image or anything, because the beauty of this particular block, and one of the reasons why I picked it, is you don't have to reverse the images for the applique. Just print this onto Applique Wonder, fuse this onto your fabric, cut on the lines, and you have the perfect sizes of fabric for your applique. Okay, so I've got my applique pieces cut, and I did cut these on my machine. And so we're going to cut that. You're going to lay it and butt it up right next to the line. And notice that these little squares on there, when you line those up, this is your seam allowance right here. So you're going to butt that right up on that line, lay it in place, fuse it down. Return your hoop to the machine, and stitch color 2, which is the stippling over the applique. Color 3, which is your decorative motif to cover the raw edge, and that's going to be your decorative stitching right here. And then stitch color 4, which is your placement stitch for your raw edge applique. With the raw edge applique in here, lay the fabric down and stitch that color over the top, the tack down, which is your color 5. And then carefully trim away the fabric and leave a little bit of don't get too close. Leave about a 1/4 of an inch in here, because I came along and you're going to fray the edges in there. And I used a toothbrush. I saved the toothbrushes the dentist gives me. You come along with the toothbrush and you just rub the toothbrush along the edge of the fabric, and then it takes and it frays the edge of the fabric. So you get a really nice frayed edge effect on there, kind of like a fringe. And it looks really, really nice. And then you're going to stitch the remainder of the design. Now, make another block or more. When I say or more, you control the size of the project. We'll talk about how we put this together in a minute. But with my sashing in the blocks, this table runner finished out at about a little under 3 feet in length, which is kind of short for a table runner. So when I say make another block or more, if you truly wanted this to be a table runner, and I'm thinking holidays, long table, lots of people, I would definitely want to make a longer table runner. So I would make 2 more blocks. And I would probably do 2 more of the Trapunto blocks and add those down on the end. Or maybe I'd do 2 Trapunto blocks and 3 of the applique blocks out there. But I'd keep it, and you could make it an even number, but I like odd numbers. I think it looks better. So expand the project to meet your needs. Also, optional, but think about this, you can make trivets. That would just be 1 block. That's what's going to happen to the extra blocks that I have that didn't get it put into the project. or you could do pot holders. Pot holders is a little iffy. You'd have to add more batting in there, and you definitely want to use solid cotton batting and add a batting in there that has the heat reflection capabilities in there. So that gets a little more tricky, but those are just some ideas that you could do with that. As far as joining the blocks together, because what's going to happen is that you're going to finish your 3 blocks or 5 or however many. And how do you put these together to create your table runner? Well, you've had the knowledge forever. Go back to your myfloriani.club, okay? And click on this tab right here in the myfloriani.club called Goodies and Extras. Now, maybe you've never explored this tab, and you should, because there's so much information available to you on this website. We put everything up there for you. So click on that Goodies and Extras, and on the Goodies and Extras page, look for this video called Joining the Blocks by Debbie Homer and DJ. And she talks about the technique to put the blocks together. It's called the Jimmy Join technique. Also, I'll just point this out, FTCU User's Manual. If you've never seen that, I just like to showcase that. But what the Jimmy Join technique does is that this is the concept. You trim your blocks a 1/2 inch. You want to, and normally if you're a quilter, you know we trim our blocks and we leave a 1/4 inch seam. The key with this technique, with these blocks that already have the batting incorporated into them, is cut them 1/2 inch and then cut your sashing fabric. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to go back right here, and this is your sashing fabric right here. Sashing, sashing right here. Cut your sashing fabric 2 inches wide and then sew 1/2 inch seams. Now I am so ingrained from all of the years that I've been sewing. As a quilter, I'm ingrained to sew a 1/4 inch seam. As a garment sewer, I used to sew a 5/8 inch seam, a little bit wider than a 1/2 inch. So before I sewed my seams, I actually took a ruler and a marking pen and I marked 1/2 inch so that I would be precise. Because the thing about this technique is precision counts. If you trim your blocks to a 1/2 inch, if you cut your sashing at 2 inches precisely, and if you sew a precise 1/2 inch seam, when you get the 2 blocks joined together, so a 1/2 inch here, and you lay them flat, they butt up perfectly next to each other and you don't have any gap. That's the secret behind joining these blocks together. So I joined my 3 blocks together. I put a sashing around the outside right here, and then I did do binding. And so as far as the binding technique goes, and by the way, and I didn't mention this, but on the back side of my fabric, I think I mentioned this in the materials at the beginning, I added another layer of batting under my table runner, and I used the Floriani fusible batting, the home deck batting, just to add a light layer of batting. And I laid it underneath the quilt block. I fused it in place, and then I cut a piece of my focus fabric for the back. So this is a true quilt. So this is the top layer, and then it's got an additional layer of batting, and then it's got my backing. So now I'm ready to bind it. I cut my binding 2.5 inches, and notice this is square, so you don't even need to cut your binding on the bias. It'll work fine without that. Fold your binding in half and press it, and then sew the binding to the outside of the project using a 1/4 inch seam. Now, I do this. I fuse, after I've got my binding on the front, I fuse a 1/4 inch piece of Floriani Applique Wonder Tape or Quilter Select 1/4 inch applique tape. The key is 1/4 inch. And I lay that Applique Wonder Tape down. I fuse it in place. I peel off the paper backing. I roll my binding around to the back and I fuse my binding down. Then I flip the quilt over and I stitch in the ditch. I did want to show this though. This is our wonderful turning tool, and in the corners, to get really nice, clean, precise corners, I use that turning tool up in the corner as I folded my corners in place. Okay, and then once I got my binding fused, I stitched in the ditch right around the outside here. So I didn't do the binding by hand. You could do it by hand, but I'm all about quick and easy. In my world, hand is a four-letter word. And so now that you have your table runner done, it's time to make another for a gift. Remember, the holiday seasons are upon us, and that is the project. Let's get social. If you make one of these, I would love to have you post it on our Facebook page. It's Floriani Embroidery. And if you haven't joined that group, I would encourage you to do it. It's a great group. You can pick up tips, you can ask questions. It's a very active group. You can also send a picture to me if you're on Instagram. I'm at Kathy Ferrel on Instagram, or you can tweet it to me. Our hashtags are November Project or Floriani Embroidery in there. And lastly, if you have questions about the project, feel free to email me. I'm kathyf@rmkdistributing.com. And just as a little tease, I want to let you know we will have a December project of the month. And in December, we're going to be knitting a scarf on our embroidery machine. It's called faux knitting. So I hope you'll tune in to learn about that. And I want to thank you for your interest in these projects of the month. I hope you learned something. I would love to see your projects. And until next month, this is Kathy Ferrel. Thank you.